All right, this is PRPHD here.
And this is Mudita Heart, and today we're talking about Marvel Studios' Eternals. This came out in last year in 2021, around like November or so, and then we watched it on Disney Plus when it came out in January 2022. And we're recording this, we've been a little tardy on this, but we're recording this in like March 6th, 2022. We actually watched this like kind of the week it came out, but we kind of dropped off on reviewing it until since then because a lot of stuff's been happening. But yeah, it's a pretty good movie. Where do we go from here? Do we go to the plot? Do we go to okay, what is the movie exactly?
Let's
go into the plot.
Let's go into what we thought before we got into the movie.
Yeah, what did we know? What did we know about this movie? We knew that it was very divisive. We knew
that's what you knew.
That's what I knew. I knew that the movie was divisive. The critics did not like it as much as the fans did on Rotten Tomatoes. I knew that like it had a really diverse cast, and like people were like viewing that as like, you know, a problem or something. Or like they were not engaging with it for whatever reason. But that was one of my appeals, one of the reasons it was appealing to me. I was like, oh, this seems interesting, a little kind of different direction for a Marvel movie. Also, like, it was pretty notable in that I had no idea what the Eternals were as a concept for the most part, because like they're not like Captain America or Iron Man or any recognizable kind of characters like that. They're like some other side thing. Like I might have heard that Thanos might have been an Eternal on Titan, but that's literally all I knew.
I didn't even know that.
So I don't think PRPHD knew that.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you heard anything else going on.
I wasn't sure if it was like X-Men or Third, Fourth World or whatever it was, and
right.
I knew Chloe Zhao, I knew Angelina Jolie and Sam Hayek, but they didn't really feature them. And I felt like the trailers for it were really bad on TV, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I wasn't really plussed by the trailers either. I think I was more interested in it on social media, probably on Instagram. I knew Kumail Nanjiani was had to I follow his stuff kind of.
Right.
He's like a South Asian American actor.
Yeah.
And like he like got into really got into physical shape to do this movie, to be like a superhero for this. So apparently that was a whole big deal, and like there's a lot of criticism coming from like people like giving backhanded compliments against him and stuff for that. So like and you know, I always thought of him as like a comedian or a funny guy. And
right.
like so it was really strange seeing him like, oh, he actually has to get in physical shape for this, so this is like a pretty big role for him. So but like that being said, there's like 10 people like that are Eternals in the cast alone. And that's where the majority of the conflict comes from, is these 10 characters in the cast that all have different backgrounds and stuff.
Yeah, I guess the main characters aren't really American, right?
Yeah. Right, so like...
And I have to get into the Kamaj stuff.
Well, most of them are American. Pretty much all of them are American. They're just different backgrounds. They're not white.
Oh, right.
They're people of color, but...
Let's see, we can get into that a little bit.
Anyway, that being said, like, who are these Eternals, anyway? Yeah. And what's their deal? So... the Eternals are this group of...
Angelina Jolie, yeah.
Yeah, so Angelina Jolie is also an interesting casting choice, I think.
Yeah.
But who are these Eternals? They're a group of ancient heroes sent from beyond the stars by the celestial Ereshkigal to protect Earth since the dawn of man in 5000 BC. And they're protecting Earth from these creatures called the Deviants, and they're like thought to be defeated in like the 1500s or so then the Eternals go their separate ways. And then 500 years later, after the events of Infinity War, the Deviants mysteriously return, and the Eternals are forced to reunite to defend humanity once again, and like understand more about their mission, and get into all kinds of conflict along the way.
Edited plot summary from Disney Plus on Wikipedia.
Yeah, so like that's kind of like mixed between Disney Plus and Wikipedia. Makes it easier to write it down,
right.
And it's also like, you know, just kind of what the movie is, and I think it's also useful to just kind of go over who the Eternals are, because like in a list, we have it written down in a list here because it's actually kind of hard to remember who everyone is. So maybe it's just worth going down the list here. So First is the primary character protagonist, I think, is Gemma Chan as Cersei. Gemma Chan is in like a lot of is like a notable Asian actress in a lot of she might actually be from the UK.
Yeah, I thought she had a British accent. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, she's. I think I mostly know her from Crazy Rich Asians as Astrid, who's
I didn't know that. Yeah.
who plays a very strong character in that, and that's a really notable character in that movie. Maybe even more interesting than the protagonist of that movie in a lot of ways, and so Gemma Chan really brings a lot to that character. Richard Madden plays Icarus, and then Cersei's kind of the protagonist. Icarus is kind of like this soldier kind of like character, kind of like a Superman kind of power-esque kind of character.
Yeah, they don't make that very subtle.
Yeah, it's like almost like literally like 1-to-1. He's just straight up Superman.
And it might be like how the character originated. They just did that. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know where they did that.
I'm not too familiar with it. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. I think in the behind the scenes, Chloe Zhao says like Icarus is in this movie is inspired by Man of Steel Superman.
We'll get more into it.
So,
even talking about the script too. Yeah.
Yeah. So then Kumail Nanjiani, who's known for being in Silicon Valley and
that's where he's from.
I think he's from that and many other things too.
That's really good. Yeah.
Stand up, a lot of podcasts and stuff. He plays Kingo, who's like into fame and like he becomes like a Bollywood actor in the modern era and like but he's also kind of like the comic relief character in this movie but he's also very loyal to his like family of fellow Eternals. There's Leah McHugh who plays a sprite and she's a young actress playing like this character who like can never age even though she has like this eternal lifespan and she has to deal with that dealing with like she's like pretty mature as a person but like she has to reckon with how she has to never age and like she can't even go to a bar which is like what other characters are doing in this. It's kind of weird how like
it's pretty weird. Yeah,
it's like why would you have like this like Eternals exist amongst humans and just like make them like deal with this bullshit. Like if you have infinite powers and that's cosmic wisdom and stuff, why would you do that?
You can like
it just makes it.
You can terraform the world, but this Eternal is gonna be the same age no matter what.
Yeah, very very weird. But anyway, Brian Tyree Henry as Phastos, who's like the technologist.
Oh, that's what he is. I guess
he's the technologist character.
Yeah. And
he is like in the universe of the Eternals that they created in the Marvel universe. Phastos is responsible for engineering a lot of humanity's discoveries throughout the course of human history, and he has to deal with an arc on that. Lauren Ridloff plays as Makari, who is super one of the fastest characters in the Marvel universe and can like run at supersonic speeds and stuff and she's also hard of hearing in the movie or actually in real life and
oh really, I didn't know that.
Yeah, she's hard of hearing in real life.
Okay.
So she's actually doing sign language and they actually said like in the behind the scenes like they had to like they're actually getting advice from her on how to make the production more friendly to people who are hard of hearing, so they actually learned from her and how to
it was a very good direction
for doing that in their process for integrating that into their production process, so very useful. And then Barry Keoghan as Druig. As Druig. I don't know why Druig was the easy part for me to pronounce there.
Well, we heard his name so often, we don't hear his real name.
Yeah, Druig, who's like
Druig!
Druig is kind of like this intense character.
Yeah, we'll get into that a little bit.
We'll get into it later, but he has like these powers and like this philosophy that makes him really intense. Yeah. And then Don Lee plays Gilgamesh, who's kind of this brawler kind of character, strongest Eternal. Don Lee is a South Korean actor who has an American citizenship, who was also in the South Korean version of Train to Busan.
Which is not Snowpiercer.
Not Snowpiercer. I said Snowpiercer earlier before this, before we started, and I was like, no, it's another movie with a train.
I was wondering if it was Snowpiercer from Korea or the adaptation on TNT.
Right, the U.S. adaptation. But no, it was Train to Busan. It was a zombie movie.
It was a train movie,
It was a train movie, my bad. And then Salma Hayek is in this movie. She plays Ajak, who's like kind of like the leader and kind of like matriarch of the Eternals, and is like kind of guiding them in their journey. And then Angelina Jolie, like huge movie actress in Hollywood, was actually like for many years like the most well-paid actress in Hollywood.
Yeah, it definitely was. Yeah.
Yeah, they actually have like that on record. Like,
I remember that. Yeah, that was the person wouldn't stop bothering her. Yeah.
Yeah, and like she kept negotiating for higher. She and her agent were able to negotiate for the highest pay in Hollywood. But yeah, here she is in this movie as like, one of the Eternals in this kind of family of misfits, and she plays Thena, who like has to go on this really interesting journey as a character.
With Kit Harington, don't mention the character's name. I think just in case.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then Angelina Jolie plays Thena, and she's also a warrior kind of character. Kit Harington is also in this movie. You don't want to get into that story.
I think the thing is like, his name might be a spoiler if people don't want to get the spoilers yet.
Part that
no, the next part.
This part.
It might be. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Oh, okay. I had to Wikipedia. I listened to Double Toasted review Eternals, and like even they said like, now I know comics, and I had to Wikipedia.
I don't know. Some people might be like, yo, that's who that guy is. Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people know.
I think a lot of people don't.
I don't.
Even I don't. I remember since like for like 13 years or 14 years. I don't remember that character. Yeah.
Someone was like,
But like his name is like pretty. I think it's pretty obvious who the character is if you know the name of the character. Yeah.
It's pretty funny. They said like even on Double Toasted's review, they said like after the movie finished, someone was like, "Oh, who's that?" in the first post-credits scene, and he was like explaining, "Oh yeah, it's probably this person." Like, "Oh, that's really interesting. Oh, who's this other person?" And he was like, "I have no idea who the hell that is. Who Kit Harington is playing and stuff." Yeah. So I don't know. But should I mention this part? I mean,
that's fine. Yeah,
because
everyone knows that part. Yeah,
yeah.
You people probably know it already. We don't even have to mention who that part.
I don't watch this show. He plays Jon Snow from Game of Thrones. So you'll be if you watch Game of Thrones, you'll recognize
the House of Snow or whatever it is.
Yeah,
I don't know,
yeah. So Jon Snow is actually one.
Throne of Snow.
I always remember hearing people love Jon Snow's character from Game of Thrones. So, and then also Harish Patel is Karun.
It's very interesting about Jon Snow with Icarus also. Jon
Snow with Icarus, interesting. Yeah.
There's a lot of like Warner Bros. Tie-ins.
Oh, sure. Right. Right. Yeah, there's a lot of... Speaking of which, speaking of Game of Thrones, the film score composer, which is like... You said like you like the score of this movie a lot. You said it was one of your favorites.
The sound design? I remember I don't know the score now, but maybe back then I said the score was really good. I don't remember.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But the composer for this is Ramin Djawadi. I believe I'm pronouncing that.
He's singing way better than I would. Yeah.
I'm trying to pronounce it best I can, yeah. And he's known for Iron Man in 2008, and he's also done a bunch of episodes of Game of Thrones. A bunch of other movies, Clash of the Titans, Pacific Rim, Westworld, some games, Gears 5, Gears of War 4, stuff like that. So,
all of those, I feel like maybe Warcraft and what else? Westworld. I'm not sure about the scores, but otherwise that's a pretty good resume, yeah.
Yeah, and also, yeah, we didn't mention, I don't think we talked about the director enough. This is directed by Chloe Zhao.
Right.
Who is definitely worth mentioning because she won, even before, she was already in the running to direct Black Widow, according to Hollywood Reporter in 2018. And then she did a presentation to Marvel about doing a pitch for Eternals. And the presentation was so good that Marvel was like worried she would take on another big studio project. So that's how impressed they were. And then she started winning Academy Awards for doing, of course, Nomadland, starring Frances McDormand as the nomads of in the U.S. And and like this kind of quasi documentary style, and yeah, so many Academy Awards. I think she won best actor. There's that movie won best actress, best director, best screenplay, or something like that.
I remember like best picture, best director,
best picture, best
the
director.
actress. Was it? Maybe
McDermott
wins a lot of
yeah.
actress awards. So I don't be surprised she did win it. Yeah, they did like her a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, and I ended up watching Nomadland after.
I forget if it was that or
Eternals.
the other movie with the guy who played Justin Hammer that she didn't win it or something, or maybe she won both. I don't remember. She won a lot of them. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, Nomadland was a great movie. I watched it after watching Eternals, and yeah, so I could see why Marvel wanted to definitely like lock her in for this big picture movie, and especially if she has the chops for like switching from an indie setting to doing a more
She did that very well.
blockbuster setting.
Yeah.
And she definitely makes that transition very well. This being her first blockbuster, just kind of knocks it out of the park.
They were very
So-
very productive couple of years.
Yeah, she-
NYU alum.
NYU alum as well. Yeah, they definitely remind us there at NYU that she was also an alum there, so that's kind of cool. Fellow NYU alum. But now I feel awkward after you made that face.
You did have to mention it on the recording, though.
This is funny.
Yeah.
I know, but yeah, Chloe Zhao was yeah, she and also like when the thing I wanted to mention is that she would be working on Nomadland at the same time as like going to do production meetings for Eternals.
Really?
So she would be like filming in a van for Nomadland, and then she'd be going to like an office for like Marvel meetings and like going over visuals and stuff like that.
No country for old directors.
So yeah, she's very young and like had a lot of energy to like do a lot of like really big high concept stuff, and also
She's gonna
really
have quite a retirement
so-
fund. Yeah.
So she said doing this stuff was able to get her health insurance and stuff and pay off
nice.
her student loans and stuff.
Wow, she had the worry of student loans.
Yeah. I mean that's NYU for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, we've talked a lot about like the behind the scenes of this movie,
Yeah.
but like what is actually happening in this movie.
Right.
So yeah,
This is where it gets very interesting. Even though like the background of the movie is interesting enough. Yeah.
Yeah, the background of the movie is interesting enough, but like, yeah, I mean, overall, like how I would describe this is that it's like, I don't know, it has some parts of an art house film, but also the scope of a Marvel movie, but also
Blockbuster.
And a blockbuster,
Space epic.
obligatory Marvel action sequences, comic book stuff. It's got Jack Kirby influences in there.
It's got a really good script that it's probably I would say one of the best Marvel scripts ever. Should I get into that? There's stuff I liked about the script, yeah.
Yeah, and it kind of reminds me I think we both agreed that it kind of reminded us of something like Cloud Atlas a lot, actually. Which is like another kind
They
of...
have like some interesting editing. I rewatched it again just a couple minutes ago. Think about it. I might take something back, but like, I don't know, there's some interesting directions. It's not very accessible for like mainstream fans, I feel.
Yeah, we did have to take a couple of breaks while watching this movie.
Yeah.
While we were watching it at home.
Yeah.
We're like, okay, we need to slow down.
It was
pretty intense movie.
Some Marvel movies feel long and like it wasn't worth it. This is a really good movie. I just need the adrenaline to like calm myself down or whatever.
Yeah, it kind of like does a lot.
Yeah.
Like it goes from like big space epic to like comic book superheroes to like
it's sort of like a historical fiction.
Yeah, it's also historical fiction at the same time, because like you're going from like the story of like these Eternals from backwards in time to like going through different eras of humanity and stuff over like 7,000 years of history, while also going into space, while also going into like personal romance and stories and stuff like that. And did we mention like, so we mentioned this part, like the
the part I'm most confused about is like, are we doing this in chronological order?
Yeah, I don't know. Do we want to do that?
I'm thinking about doing it that way.
Okay, let's do it that way, like in the past formats. Okay, yeah. So, Yeah, the movie starts with like starting in the past in like Mesopotamia, and we work our way forwards in time until
Well,
with the
even
current
before
day.
that, like you're on the ship, and then they get
Right,
sent down to Mesopotamia.
right,
Yeah,
right. And then we're working our way forwards in time from like 5,000 years to like
yeah,
1,500 years
yeah. It
to
was like
like,
I'm not sure it was Sumerian or Mesopotamia, right?
and then there's like also the Gupta Empire.
I guess like Mesopotamia is like modern civilization, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
sure, yeah.
and like there's the Gupta Empire, and there's also like the I don't know if the Incans or Aztecs or Mayans, I forget.
I forgot.
Like in Central America, but like,
Oh, yeah, they move around, yeah.
and then they reach the current day where they have to deal with stuff in 7 days. Somehow they have to do it in 7 days, even though they spent like thousands of years.
They've been slacking. They've been slacking.
So it's like, oh, you could have told us like at least a decade earlier, you know. But yeah, 100 years earlier would have helped, you know. But
Yeah.
we've been here for thousands of years. It tells us we got 7 days now.
Yeah.
Anyway, let me see what else. But yeah, it deals with a lot of big, deep, kind of philosophical concepts about like the center of humanity and like, you know, what are we
It's,
here for, and like what if we didn't like what we were here for, you know, and does it even matter anymore?
It's a disaster movie. Also, it's
Yeah, it's also kind of like has historical war movie stuff in it too,
yeah.
and like features like depictions of colonization and stuff, and like
It's a very interesting take on like superheroes and like world dilemmas and stuff.
yeah,
I
like,
don't know if it's like, well, I can't remember at the moment, but like some of it doesn't feel like what we're experiencing now. It's sort of it's escapist, but like it's still like makes you think about that kind of stuff.
yeah, it is kind of like dealing with like a lot of the problems that like I didn't watch Man of Steel,
Right.
but like I heard like Man of Steel dealt with a lot of questions of like, or like maybe I can speak to more of like something that I have watched or something is like I watched Watchmen.
Yeah.
This is also very reminiscent of Watchmen.
Both Zack Snyder, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. That's true.
Yeah.
Where like Watchmen deals with like, what if these characters have all these like ridiculous powers? How would they actually react to like a lot of the kind of problems that humanity's facing? And,
yeah, that's a very good way of putting it. Actually, like,
and like if
you'd have to try and fix humanity's problems if you could,
right, and
or
yeah.
Later on in the plot, something else.
Right, like they face these like temptations of like, oh, we could just solve all this right now if we were to just step in, but would that actually be moral or not?
I just remember you reminded me of one of the plot twists in the film.
Yeah,
and with Cersei, and there's also stuff about gods creating gods and stuff.
right.
I don't know if that's. I'm not sure if that's a spoiler, but like,
right.
I don't remember too well. And if you didn't watch it, I don't think you know what I would be talking about.
Right. But yeah, it is a lot about like, you know, and it also deals with like a lot of questions of like, what is it even like to live that long a period of time,
Yeah.
knowing that you're never going to die, and like, you know, what that does to somebody and how that affects their views of humanity, and like how to like
I think that might be a little bit too real.
right, and but also how to reconnect with humanity if you have enough time too. Also, is another question.
Or if you grow apart from like people you're close
If
to.
you feel distant from people, you know, how do you reconnect with humanity and find your own humanity if you have enough time too, which is another question at the heart of the movie as well. So yeah, yeah. Anyway, we're talking about a lot of abstract things, but like, yeah, what sets all of this kind of in motion is like the natural setup of like these characters on this timeline, but also like the events of like, how they have to be together, then go apart and find their own way, and then how they reach different conclusions as individuals, and then how they come together and fight and clash with each other, having different philosophies, having taken away different things from like their experiences on their own and stuff. And you know, they don't get along, and they're kind of like this weird family that only understands each other because only they can identify with each other's issues and stuff. But ultimately, you know, they take sides and like end up deciding things based on the lessons they've learned from seeing the wonders of humanity and the positive things of humanity. It's ultimately a hopeful story, even though we're talking about all this stuff like war and devastation.
It's pretty dark.
And stuff, so yeah, a lot, and all these characters go on different arcs regarding this.
Yeah, and some for the worse, but
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like we're trying. It feels like now we're naturally falling into like a rhythm of like avoiding talking about too many spoilers.
Right.
But I think we should probably mention at least a little bit of like what's.
Should we get
going
into
on.
it now? You think it's about time?
What do you think? Spoiler talk or like?
I think we want to get into it.
Are we gonna do full spoiler talk now?
I guess so. Like, I think I'm already out of room of
non-spoiler talk.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so now we're doing full spoiler talk.
Yeah.
But yeah. Okay, so full spoiler talk. Yeah. What do you think? Where do we even start? I mean.
Spoiler. Like, try to avoid like the super spoilers to like later, possibly.
Yeah.
We were talking about like early on, like still chronological would be good. Like
Yeah.
Like before we started the podcast, we were talking about like, wow, like when we get that Druid, like before Druid like seemed like this, he wasn't going to be like, he was played like by a non-major big star like Angelina Jolie, and he's sort of like not like your typical A-lister, but like they give him this role of this guy.
They make him like this kind of intense-faced, kind of like, he looks like a real kind of like misfit kind of, I don't know. Like, they kind of cast him as, like, this very serious person.
He's probably one of the more philosophical ones, even though he's, like, a pawn or whatever.
Yeah, but he's also...
And he also, like, his power is he sort of controls pawns also.
Yeah, his power is that he's able to manipulate people, which naturally sets itself up for, like, being, like, a really terrible... And he can do it en masse on a terrifying scale.
He did it with, like...
He did it with a whole town of people.
Really early in the film, he's like, I could just control everyone and not let everyone destroy each other. Why would you let me do it? Or whatever it was, yeah.
Yeah, he's just straight up controls a whole city of people.
Yeah.
And just says, I'm going to stop the fighting right now.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh shit, like that's what you do with that power, but like...
And that's
does that justify...
them to split each other, yeah.
Yeah, and that's like... Yeah, that's when they decide, like, they've gone too far and like, they need to go their separate ways and stuff. They realize they've, like... had enough of like doing things a certain way, yeah, I think that like part is like a key turning point of the movie because it marks a point where like the Eternals have to reckon with like their destiny as like these people who have these powers, but also try to understand what their relationship with humanity is and how to regain their own humanity if they're able to.
I think that was Ajax's guidance.
Yeah, exactly. That was Ajax's guidance, is that you guys have to go out and do that.
Yeah.
And you guys will have to find it, and I can't tell you how to do it. You have to find it on your own.
Yeah.
And everyone does it in different ways, in some ways better than others, and it kind of leads into what leads into conflicts. But also, like, in earlier parts of the movie, they set up all the relationships between the different Eternals and their dynamics and stuff. And, like, part of, like, the key dynamic of, like, maybe the key dynamic in the movie is the relationship between Circe and Icarus, because Icarus is like maybe like seen as like this kind of quasi de facto leader who's like, just because he's the strongest and like the most stalwart and stoic kind of like of the Eternals, people just kind of look up to him as to like.
Also you have like Marvel with like Captain America and all that stuff.
Yeah,
and Iron Man and the Iron Patriot.
Yeah, you kind of like.
You've all like. Yeah. Icarus is played by like a British guy, yeah.
Yeah, I think he might be like Irish or something.
Yeah,
I can't really tell based on his accent. I literally don't know what it is.
I'm very bad with figuring out his accents. Yeah,
it's not a bad thing. I'm just really bad with telling.
Yeah.
I also think it might be hard to tell with the audio sometimes. I just don't know what he's saying.
Also, he's like an Eternal, so they don't really reference that kind of stuff.
Yeah, they're not gonna say he's from Ireland.
I'm the Irish Eternal.
Yeah, they're it's not like Power Rangers or something. We're gonna celebrate, a holiday today to highlight, it's the puzzle place, and like we're gonna celebrate Cultural Awareness Month or whatever.
The Burns.
It's not that kind of movie.
Right.
Like it is, but like yeah.
Well, for better or worse, it's
yeah.
not that kind of movie.
Yeah, these Eternals are representing different cultures because, like, as if like they're like this. But like to explain that, like I think the stance that the movie's taking is that the movie's representing the different world cultures through these different people.
2020's version, yeah.
Because like if they are supposed to be the originators of like a lot of world myths and stuff, then the Eternals themselves should represent different cultures.
I feel like in the 90s, if they had did it, it would have been really offensive for them to do that kind of stuff now.
Right.
Yeah.
And yeah, at the core of this movie is also the fact that the Eternals are kind of like these like characters that are kind of like inspired by like ancient alien myth, theories and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And like they're at they're like the creators of like different technologies and stuff, and throughout the course of human history and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Getting into real woo woo stuff there,
Yeah.
but it's actually really quite fascinatingly packaged into this one movie, and maybe that's as much as I want to get into that for like the time being, because like that stuff can be a rabbit hole and stuff. So,
I'm trying to remember if it was Icarus or like Ancient Civilization who was the first person to attack and defeat a deviant in the movie.
I think the humans are trying to fight off the deviants with like spears and stuff. And then like it's the Eternals with like their magical powers that are able to fight off the deviants and stuff. And these deviants are like these like they're like
Nemo and Slumberland demons.
Yeah, they're kind of like these kind of like
they're way better than the ones in Shang-Chi.
Yeah, they're like these kind of amorphous, like pulsating, vibrating, kind of like almost taking the form of animals and like different creatures and different parts of
they're sort of like parasites at the same time,
yeah. But I thought I was making a point at some point. What was I talking about? Cersei and Icarus. They have two diametrically opposing philosophies towards humanity.
How the powers are very different too, yeah.
And the powers are diametrically opposed.
Yeah.
Icarus is about power and like literally punching and flying and shooting laser beams out of his eyes.
Like the Superman myth, yeah.
And like he's got to uphold the goals of the Celestials that they're sent to do. And he believes
he's very loyal.
He believes in rigid hierarchy and figuring out like we gotta find solutions. We can't just sit around. And,
he's thankful for the Celestials. He thought the Celestials taught him a lot of stuff.
I think he responds a lot to authority, and like I think he like demands a lot of authority.
Yeah,
he's a very authoritative kind of character. He's
an enforcer.
He's an enforcer, yeah. Whereas like Cersei's character is like kind of the heart of the movie, and like she's a very sensitive character that like appreciates a lot of like admires like a lot of like people's like even in ancient Mesopotamia she's like trying to get to know the people and like
she wears their clothes and stuff,
wears their clothes, appreciates everyone, like appreciates the children, she's a nurturing character. Her power isn't even to destroy things but to just change it into a different form.
She doesn't really use her power that much,
and like it's and
I guess it helps that her power doesn't really work that well against the demons to begin with.
It's not really meant to be something that can be used to destroy things, but as we'll see during the course of the movie, she gets to learn more about the extent of how her powers can unfold and like how powerful they can be and stuff. I don't know. You could just spend a whole video or podcast just diving into each of these characters' backgrounds and like what they mean and their philosophies and stuff. Like Kingo is a fascinating character too. He's a fun character. He's very loyal to the Eternals, but he wants to be able to enjoy life and humanity and like wants to be able to be seen and stuff like that. He doesn't want to go into hiding. That's not his way of going about things. And like he even
forgot about that,
yeah, and like he has like his partner Karun like filming him a documentary about him.
It's probably the most contemporary Eternal,
He's the one that's maybe most adapted to contemporary society, but also has had like zero ability to like stay off the grid. Because like he's just straight up like making movies and stuff. But also in order to do that, he has to keep rearranging his identity and pretending he's a new person each
Oh, I
time.
forgot about that. Yeah, he's like the son of the son of the son,
He's
and
the
the father of the father of the father.
I've been making Bollywood. Bollywood's been in the family for 100 years or whatever.
Yeah, whatever. It felt like it's probably a lot longer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's a really fun character.
I thought that like he was going to be like a very serious character, and that part I thought was interesting. It was a little bit what's the right word for it? It deviated from that.
Deviated.
It's totally not what they did with that.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's fine. Yeah. Oh, and I guess later on we have to talk about the side he chose.
The side he chose, yeah. So when it comes down to it, there's I don't know. We'll get to that. I guess.
Yeah.
And then Leah McHugh as Sprite. Sprite has had to deal with a lot of frustration in her life as a character, because she always wants to grow up. It's literally like a Tinkerbell kind of scenario.
Oh, I think Kingo's the one who mentions it, right?
He points it out even very directly, making a reference to the Disney franchise.
It's a very referential movie. They don't. It's sort of like the Ready Player One of Marvel films.
They make a lot of references in this movie.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's straight up Ready Player One. That goes really far off the deep end.
Not that far, but
like in terms of dialogue.
In terms of like a Marvel film, like any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, they were mentioning, Peter Pan. They were mentioning, Batman and Superman.
I was gonna
They were mentioning
Batman and Superman with Icarus. Yes, they straight up say it. So I'm wondering if like the DC Cinematic Universe is part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe now.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's like that meme of like when like Thor is watching the Star Wars prequel trilogy.
Oh, really? I forgot about that.
There's a meme of like Thor watching the Star Wars prequels, and he sees like Samuel L. Jackson playing Mace Windu, and then he sees Natalie Portman play Princess Amidala, Queen Amidala, and he's like, "What the heck is this shit?" Because of course these people are Nick Fury, and
Oh, I forgot that. The lady from Thor, yeah,
and lady from Thor or whatever. So like, I mean that's the
yeah.
problem when you have these universes growing and growing and growing. You're gonna inevitably have overlap between these different things and stuff. Fun facts.
Yeah.
I learned that Gemma Chan is already in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
I forgot about the character, yeah.
She's in...
is it the Wikipedia? I don't remember the character.
She's in Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
As one of the aliens.
Did you watch that yet?
I did watch Captain Marvel.
I don't remember.
I don't remember that character. Yeah. I looked up the clip of the character again after watching Eternals just to remind myself, and I'm like, I don't remember who this is. Yeah. I didn't even remember that this character had a name. Yeah. So maybe that's one of the reasons why they could recast Gemma Chan, is because nobody's going to remember it anyway. Yeah. So it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Sort of like K2SO.
Yeah. Right. It's just the voice acting.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So Brian Tyree Henry plays Fastos. His character has a really interesting journey. His character is just literally the examination of the role of technology and the morality of it in the course of humanity. It's like he's straight up dealing with like concepts like Oppenheimer and like the advent of gunpowder and like
even before that with like the wheel or something, right?
Right, like, or the invention of like steel blades or something. Technology is, there's swords to plowshare as a concept.
But he didn't do the iPhone like Kingo did with the vlogging.
Right. Kingo is the one that ends up using technology for like entertainment.
Yeah.
But then Fastos finds that whenever he makes technology, it ends up being used for war.
There's a very dramatic. I don't know how to say it. It's because it's pretty dramatic how they show that. Yeah.
Pretty intense stuff with Fastos.
With like a certain. No, I can't even say that.
But he's able to find ultimately his own slice of humanity, and you kind of root for him the most. Yeah. Because he like feels he's very empathetic.
He did the worst thing, and he feels the most sorry for it. Yeah.
He's an intelligent character, but he's not. But he ultimately has to reckon with the fact that how people use technology is not in his control.
He was a little naive of how he was a little bit too hopeful about humanity, or like when they would get certain things. Yeah.
Yeah, and then he just kind of opts out of it all, and then but eventually he's able to find happiness in the movie.
Yeah.
And his own terms.
Yeah.
And has his own family and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah. I guess it goes to show you, I got a Magic the Gathering card called Swords to Plowshare, which is
Swords of a Revealing Light.
Sorry, you're talking about Yu-Gi-Oh! Now, but Swords to Plowshare is a reference to the Bible verse.
Oh,
referring
right.
to like you set aside the
I think he
sword
mentions that in the film. Yeah.
Does he mention that too?
I think that might have been one of his technologies. Yeah.
Interesting. You set aside the sword and turn to the plowshare.
Yeah.
Which means like you're setting aside military technology and using that same like usage for like something more during peacetime like crop gathering and stuff like that. So
maybe some variation, maybe not quite. Yeah.
I hope. Yeah. That's the basic idea he
Yeah.
has as a character though, for sure. Lauren Ridloff plays Makari. Her character honestly has like kind of like less involvement in the story.
Yeah.
But very interesting character too. She's kind of like she's also the main love interest of Druig.
I thought that was in there early on, and they turned away from that later.
It was in there early on.
They were platonic, but then nothing happened.
Or
maybe she was like, "Yo, this guy's controlling a bunch of people. I gotta get away from that guy."
It was in there early on, and then I totally forgot about it. And then it's all the way in there at the very end of the movie, when like you're like, "Oh, they're getting together again," and they're like,
after like 3 hours or like 7,000 years.
After 7,000 years,
I'm free.
They finally chat up with each other again. Yeah. They finally go to get that drink that they've been talking about. Yeah. But yeah, she's super speed, and she also is speaks through sign language. I don't know if I believe it's probably American Sign Language, but I'm making an assumption there. But also apparently other cast members learned some sign language to be able to speak with her on during the film, and they also use sign language during the movie when you're watching it, and it's used very naturally. They don't like make a big deal out of it. They don't bring attention to it. They just use it very naturally, which is like how you should just do it. You don't make a big deal out of it. And although like there will be people who are like, "Why are you making such a big deal out of this and keeping it in our face?" and like, but they're literally not. Yeah. It's just there. Just like it is with all the other representation in this movie. They're not like shoving it in your face. It's just literally there. It's literally just who the characters are. And it's not like, unorthodoxly just shoved in there. It's just very natural. And I think the movie's done really, really well.
And it's well researched. They've spent a lot of time on it. Yeah.
I guess we are just going over the characters again, but but
I forgot to mention
story.
I forgot to mention how like I screwed up the American thing because Angelina Jolie is obviously American.
Right.
Donald Lee I thought was American, but you corrected me on that.
He's born in South Korea. He has an American citizenship.
Oh, he's American citizenship, so that makes sense. Okay. Lauren Ridloff, is she American? I can tell because she doesn't talk. She doesn't talk.
She's a person of color, but I don't know what her background is.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, like, also kind of like you don't really know because it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter because
it doesn't matter. You're just watching the movie. Yeah. It doesn't matter. Like, why does it matter? Like, it's like we're asking where are you from or something by asking these questions, kind of almost, right? Like,
just because I mentioned it, I forgot to mention it.
Yeah. It is useful to kind of know.
I think it reminds me of like that movie Bob thing where they're like everything's a human. Why does everything in space gotta be a human? Why can't there be like a big bird or something? I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it just takes a lot of work to do. But like in this movie, it actually makes sense. Because like they're kind of like the proto-human like race or something like that. So it actually does kind of make sense
in a thing, not like a dangerous way.
Yeah.
I wonder if we should take a break because like I think we're running out of voice because like
my throat is drying out.
Yeah, I noticed. Yeah, I felt like we have a lot to talk about, but like I think we need to take a lot of drinks of water.
Yeah. Let's pause for a bit.
All right.
We'll come back after the break.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe we put.
It's really good. Thanks a lot for everyone listening. We'll be right back.
Yeah. Be right back.
Bye.
All right, and we're back from our break.
Yeah.
Yeah, we needed some water. I was like dying on the recording before with my throat drying out
Yeah.
like a desiccated. I don't even know what, but
Yeah, let's probably not say anything
and that's
upsetting.
not- yeah. Every I feel like all my thoughts are going to something upsetting now.
I was gonna go. I don't know.
All jokes are getting depressing and stuff nowadays. You can't make a joke anymore without you leading
Let's
into
not
some
get into
kind
that
of upsetting
either.
thing.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's talk about the turtles. Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about turtles. Where
Talk
like,
about turtle. At least it's fiction.
the whole world gets destroyed. Yeah,
But it's
whatever.
very inclusive. And it's also about superheroes who
Let's not get
eventually
into that
save the
either,
day.
yeah.
Also, the heroes save the day in the end. Also, Chloe Zhao is a very good director who's skyrocketing up in her career. Also, all these actors are doing a great job. Great special effects. What a movie, huh? Okay, as far as like all the scale of things in humanity, you know, it's not all that bad. It could be worse. It could be better. Okay, I'm gonna stop talking now.
Sure, we do or delete this.
Let's just leave it.
All
I,
right.
I think we should leave it.
All right,
It'd be too much work to edit at this point.
we just delete it.
Let's- I think it's fine. Let's keep going.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
All right. So anyway,
He had a flower while he was
Anyway,
getting his
we're-
water. Yeah.
we're on break. We're just going through the characters and going through the story of the characters. So I just want to revisit Sprite's character, played by Leah McHugh. Sprite's character, we mentioned her character, looks up to Icarus's character, and has this Tinkerbell dynamic. Also, a part of her character when she goes in the arc where they're all split up, the Eternals split up, she's one of the characters who's not able to grow from the time they split up, which is what Ajax is intending when they all go to search for their own meaning.
Yep.
And Sprite is one of the characters that's not able to do that because she's cursed to just appear as a child for like 500 years. So you literally can't form any meaningful connections or relationships unless you're like going into like, you know, it just doesn't work. Like, so she literally can't do that. And she's not able to like move forward with her life until the Eternals come back together at some point. So
I was got a little bit of a point, but it's a little bit dumber of a point, I guess.
okay, sure, yeah, let's lighten it up, yeah.
Not that dumb, but like
Okay.
sort of like duh. Icarus can fly like Peter Pan, and Sprite is Tinkerbell. Yeah.
Oh right,
Yeah.
yeah. Sprite's powers is that she can make like magical fireworks appear and stuff like that. She's also a storyteller, so she's able to recount the tales of the. I think they portray her as like the myth maker of like the Eternals, and like is the one that like implants into humanity the legend of like Icarus and Circe and like Gilgamesh and stuff, and that's how people pass on this oral tradition of like where these folk tales come from and stuff like that.
I think something very interesting they could have done that they didn't do is like when Peter Pan's coming out, like they make the connection over there, the actual tale of Peter Pan,
When Peter Pan's coming out, what do you mean?
like in the 1800s or whatever it was. The actual Peter Pan stories made. But I feel that would be too much into the budget. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
Well, if they see like Walt Disney
She's
like making the movie.
I don't know where the Disney movies are in. I don't. Yeah. I don't know. Like
The small world after all,
are they
right?
referring? Yeah. So Kumail Nanjiani's character mentions
And he's a movie star, yeah.
Sprite is Tinkerbell and the Peter Pan and Wendy and stuff, but what is? I don't know. What is Is he referring to the J.M. Barrie novel Peter Pan, the play, or is it referring to the Disney movie or what? I don't know.
Right.
It's ambiguous. Do they have to get the rights to that? Also, in the universe of Eternals,
Well, I mean, they don't have to because wait, you mean in
this Marvel Cinematic
in this
universe,
Marvel Cinematic Universe they have to get the rights to it
that also is a question. What does that mean?
because like in real life they don't have to as much. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, interesting. So yeah, that's just something I wanted to go over with Sprite's character, and then ultimately that leads to her like joining like Icarus's side in when they have the conflict at the end of the story, which is like it's like a third of the movie, like a quarter of the movie is like this ending fight scene, which is like all the characters getting together for like one epic final battle and showdown and stuff. Yeah. So we'll get to that later. Makari, I think we're just going over Makari. We already went over Festus, his journey. Festus is of course.
I think we're over Makari in the sign language thing.
Makari, she opts out of she has a relationship with Druig. She opts out of like even bothering to like move connect with humanity. So she just spends her entire time inside their ship, just reading books. And honestly,
is that what happened?
I think that's what she does, right?
All I know is that like she's gone like 6,000 years.
Yeah.
Then she shows up.
I think you blink and you miss it. She's just when they go back to the ship to like reconnect and like figure out what their plans for the next steps are. She's just sitting in a chair reading books and stuff. And I think that's just what she'd been doing for 500 years or something like that. Or maybe she'd ran off and then did stuff and then she just came back and decided to just sit there or something. But yeah. And I think that's like another way of responding to like the trauma that the Eternals go through. I think it's what it is a trauma response to what the Eternals go through. That's that. That's not a trauma response. I'm gonna close this window. It's pretty
and New Yorkers.
New Yorkers. It's not a trauma response. I don't know. It could be for that person listening to that.
Yeah, that person was zooming like Makari out there.
That was zooming like Makari.
To the couple
in a car. All right, that's really bad. Pretty stupid.
Whatever.
All right. And then anyway, Druig.
Yeah.
Way to lead into Druig. Druig is the darkest character, I think. Maybe
in the beginning at least.
In the beginning. Later on, the darker character is Icarus, but
oh boy.
I don't know. You could argue that.
We'll get into that later.
But Druig is like maybe early on, like you see him as like the darkest character because his power is to manipulate people, and he's tempted by that to like just solve all of humanity's problems if he just chooses to, and he explicitly says in the story, like, I could control the entire human population if I wanted to, and just resolve all human conflict at any moment. But what he learns over the course of those 500 years, when they all go and spread off and do their own thing, is like he can't do that. It ultimately has to be humanity's decision to decide what they're going to do with themselves and stuff. And that's really quite an interesting... I don't know, even if you could like manipulate people to do what you told them to, it wouldn't be the right way of doing things. Even if it is for their own good, they have to reach that conclusion themselves. So he resigns himself to like just living in this village with like a couple dozen villagers, and ultimately he is controlling the village, which is still kind of messed up, but at least that's what he resolves to do as like something that's more humane than like manipulating all of humanity.
It sort of feels like a big boss villain, in addition to like, I don't think it was necessarily like humanity has to make the choice themselves, other than it's more like you shouldn't just because you have a power doesn't mean you should abuse it, or like, do you have the right to use that kind of power? Is the thing.
Do you have the right to use that kind of power, and like, is even if it's for their own good, like, do you have the right to do that? And is that humane enough? Is that acceptable? And like, yeah, and like people would ultimately know that they're being manipulated and stuff. So that's not right. But I don't know, to say the least. Yeah, and like he actually views it from a philosophical standpoint where he's like kind of using cold reasoning. So we should close the door because of the TV downstairs. But he actually reaches these conclusions through like using like a kind of cold, impersonal reasoning and calculus towards things, which is, you can kind of see him as being inhumane. But you know, you can kind of see his logic where he's doing it from like this perspective of like, oh, I'm doing this for humanity's own good, and he's like almost willing to go down that route, and he's tempted to do that in the 1500s, but he doesn't go down that route ultimately. It's kind of like the stance that like Thanos takes in like Infinity War, but like Druig ultimately decides to not go the full route of doing that. Whereas like Thanos is straight up like, I know what's best for the universe, and they'll be grateful when I do this. And in that sense, they both are kind of cousins as Eternals on different planets and stuff. So, yeah, it's a similar kind of problem that they face with this kind of like burden and stuff like that. And yeah, you can reach different conclusions and stuff. But that's kind of the wisdom of Ajax, is allowing the Eternals to like come together and learn from each other and learn from humanity and reach these conclusions themselves as to what the best course of action is. So yeah.
Yeah, to counter Druig, yeah.
Counter Druig, yeah. And Druig also finds his also you can kind of see Druig's humanity again when he sees Makari again, because they have a thing going on, so.
He had good intentions. I wouldn't say he was doing it out of evil or whatever.
He's doing it.
He's trying to do it to save humanity.
But like, yeah, in that sense, it's this. But like, yeah, it's this weird twisted logic where like, it's he through his. Yeah, he's using cold reasoning.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, if I just did this, it would like, wouldn't that just solve all the problems? It's like, well, you'd just be doing this kind of inhumane thing, and that in that sense, he's like Thanos, right?
Yeah.
So yeah. Yeah, who do we have next? Don Lee as Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh is the strongest Eternal. He's
a very good cook.
He's a good cook. He's the one everyone has the dinner at the middle of the movie with, and they all joke around, and he's like very warm-hearted. He's like has a good laugh. He makes nice pies and stuff like that. But if you mess with him, he'll punch people. He's like a big defender. Yeah, lovable.
He's the one who can beat Athena.
Yeah, and like, yeah, when Athena goes on her arc, he's the one that like keeps an eye on her after the 1500s. So like he's the one that's like Athena's protector during that time period. And that's what he decides to
balances out her power when she's out of control.
Yeah, he's probably the only one that maybe, except for like maybe Icarus, who can like keep her in check.
Yeah.
And he decides to do that, and that's what he's willing to do.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know.
Oh right, because like in the 1500s or the Mesopotamian era, like she gets bewitched or whatever, and then they have to make the decision on if.
This is my phone cable.
Yeah, on if like they should. I forget if they have to like erase her memory or like get rid of her. I forgot what the thing was exactly.
Yeah, so we'll just go into this Angelina Jolie's character, Athena.
Yeah, naturally going, yeah.
Athena's character, she's introduced in the beginning of the movie as like this warrior.
Very strong, more powerful.
She knows how to manipulate weapons with her hands. She makes them appear out of thin air. She's able to fight really well. She also doesn't really know how to... She's described by Chloe Zhao as like not knowing how to like act in the world without fighting, like other warriors. So like it's like almost like a war veteran who doesn't know how to adapt to civilian life afterwards. And then she's the one in the 1500s that suffers from what they called in the movie mad weary. What you had a point to chime in on?
I feel like that was more of a direction than what was actually in the film. But like,
yeah,
it works that way, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that Chloe Zhao says in the behind the scenes that I'm like, oh, that sounds really cool. But like, I'm not sure how much of it really reads super clearly or super obviously.
Oh, really?
Or like, but like, at least like it's in the back in the background of the direction of the movie, so you can kind of pick up on it intuitively on some level. So you feel like there is direction for these characters' motivations and stuff. But yeah, yeah. So yeah, in the 1500s, something happens to her. She just starts to lose it and starts attacking the other Eternals, and that's when they have to realize, they reach a point where they're like, okay, we have to do something here. We either have to do... Athena is going through something called mad worry, according to Ajax.
It's like an Eternals disease, I think. Or
it's a disease that Eternals get that Ajax describes as when the Eternals live for a long enough period of time, they're at risk of developing something called mad worry, which causes them to lash out. And the only solution to it is to wipe out their memories. because like it's caused by the fact that they've accumulated so
Yeah,
many
yeah.
memories over
That's
time.
what it was. Yeah.
So they're like, okay, do we wipe out Thena's memories, or do we keep her the way she is, but then she's going to be dangerous? And ultimately, they decide to keep her memories because they want her the way she is, even if it's going to be this state where she's not the same person. Because and then Gilgamesh decides to take care of her in that state.
Yeah.